Harrison Ford isn't one to keep his thoughts about cash-grabbing franchises to himself. Fans know just how long he's been trying to get Han Solo killed off in Star Wars. If the story has nothing new to offer, he believes they should be left alone. And that's exactly what he thought about the 5th installment of the beloved Indiana Jones movies as well. But now that the movie's release gets closer, what does he think? Let's find out. First up, Ford believed that Indiana Jones 5 was unnecessary. Harrison Ford will return to the role of the most well-known archaeologist in Hollywood when Indiana Jones 5 releases. But when the studios first decided to produce the 5th movie, the actor believed it was unnecessary. The 80-year-old actor first portrayed the role in Raiders of the Lost Ark all the way back in 1981. So, 40 years later, it makes sense that fans would like to know how everything ended for Jones, and Ford thought it would be fine to explore that bit. Fortunately, now that shooting has wrapped, Ford is feeling better about the latest installment. He revealed that the movie is another amazing adventure that is full of emotion and laughs, but is also complex. While the process of making the movie was tougher than usual, he is very happy with the way the film has turned out. Big words from the lead of the movie, which is no doubt a good sign for fans. All we need to do now is wait for the premiere that is scheduled for June 30th, 2023. Up next, why did Ford return for a 5th installment? When Steven Spielberg and George Lucas collaborated in 1981 to create the action classic Raiders of the Lost Ark, they unleashed its legendary lead character, Indiana Jones. Harrison Ford would return to film the sequels Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The title of the 3rd movie made everyone believe that it was Ford's last adventure with the character as well. But the retired archaeologist made a surprise return in 2008 in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Spielberg returned to direct the movie, and George Lucas was one of the writers of the movie again. The movie was expected to be an instant classic. No one could predict what would happen though. Unfortunately, the installment was considered by the majority to be a stain on the entire franchise. Yeah, that's harsh, but true too. Crystal Skull just didn't have what made the previous sequels so charming. And not to mention, as Kathleen Kennedy said, the plot just wasn't strong enough to work. She explained that the cast and crew all set out to create a great movie, but sometimes studios can miss the mark, which is what happened with Indy 4. After the negatively received sequel, it's a surprise that the studio is revisiting the franchise once again, but Ford's confidence in it seems to be a good sign for the franchise. Coming up, practical effects preferred to CGI. The next bit of news is good too, specifically for those who are suffering from Marvel fatigue. Instead of using CGI for various sequences, the director, James Mangold, opted to use practical effects instead. Although Harrison Ford will return as the titular archaeologist and explorer for a 5th and final time, Indiana Jones 5 is the first installment that was not directed by Steven Spielberg. Instead, Mangold was hired by Disney-owned Lucasfilm to take on the responsibility. Mangold has had success in almost every genre, having helmed Copland, 3:10 to Yuma, Girl Interrupted, Logan, Walk the Line, and Ford vs. Ferrari. But it's still unclear how the Oscar-nominated director will perform with a big-budget franchise movie. The one thing that the director insisted upon from day one of the pre-production meetings was to say no to the volume, which has replaced green screens in Hollywood. This technology was developed for Disney's The Mandalorian and other Star Wars projects such as Obi-Wan Kenobi. The technology uses a large curved LED screen to create realistic backgrounds for the scenes in place of creating large physical sets. Following up, what does this mean for Indiana Jones 5? Mangold's decision to pass on the volume in favor of practical effects shows that he understands what makes Indiana Jones work. The first 3 installments of the Indiana Jones trilogy were released from 1981 to 1989 at a time when innovations like the volume were non-existent. Plus, other visual effects just didn't have the current level of sophistication. So the early Indiana Jones films had the feel of a classic serial adventure because Spielberg and company were forced to rely on practical effects. When used sparingly, visual effects blended in seamlessly and were hard to tell apart from the practical effects. This made the movie realistic and grounded. But this was not what Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull turned out to be. Apart from other several issues, the extensive use of CGI was criticized by critics and viewers as well. You may not remember, but the movie brought various extraterrestrial components, aliens, interdimensional portals, and a huge flying saucer to screens. Looks like this was a good decision on Mangold's end. Moving on, will de-aging Ford in Indiana Jones 5 work? While they might not be using a lot of CGI for the movie, one scene requires it to be used. It was recently confirmed that Ford will be de-aged to appear almost 40 years younger for a scene that is set in 1944. If you ask us, that's a lot. But then again, visual effects have come a long way. This isn't the first time that a studio will be attempting to de-age actors to play a younger version of them. Robert Downey Jr. had a small clip in Captain America: Civil War. Martin Scorsese also de-aged Robert De Niro and Al Pacino for various scenes in The Irishman. Then, there's the technique that was used by Lucasfilm in The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett, where another actor played the role of Luke Skywalker, though Mark Hamill's younger face was placed on him. This technique works better for one major reason. De Niro may have looked younger in the movie, but the 79-year-old wasn't able to manage to move as easily as he once could. If the studio would like viewers to be excited about seeing the young Indiana Jones after so long, that does not mean there are no risks associated with the flashback. If the CGI isn't executed well, then the movie would begin on a bad note and set the tone for the rest of the movie. And that's not how you want any movie to begin. Following up, why could de-aging Harrison Ford backfire? Harrison Ford may have fully backed Indiana Jones 5's choice to use technological advancements to de-age him, but the film will have to do a perfect job to avoid receiving any negative reviews. So there won't be much room for error because audiences are completely aware of what the famous actor looked like a few decades ago. As we stated, making Indiana Jones look younger on the outside doesn't solve the problem of making him move like a younger guy. The features of performers in The Irishman and Captain Marvel had some aging difficulties, but the character's movements reminded you that the actor was older than they looked. In this case, it's more beneficial to do what Lucasfilm handled young Luke in The Mandalorian. The biggest issue with de-aging Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones 5 is more unusual because the sequence will take viewers back in time to a time when Indiana Jones was in his prime. This calls for the opening flashback scene to be on par with the original trilogy, which is considered to be one of the best action films ever made. A younger Ford will only serve to increase the comparisons between the movie and its predecessors. But now the film must literally prove that the 1944 scenario is just as good as Steven Spielberg's productions. Moving on, de-aging Ford could also be brilliant. Sure, Indiana Jones 5 is taking a risk by de-aging Ford, but the movie will be all the more amazing if it actually succeeds. This would imply that James Mangold would begin the sequel with a scene that immediately reminds viewers of the good old days when Indiana Jones was younger. We can assure you, nostalgia works. This could be the perfect start before the movie advances to a plot forward to enable Ford's more experienced archaeologists to take the stage. The scene will serve as a perfect reminder for even unfamiliar audiences to see just how far the adventurer has come. Finally, who's coming to Indiana Jones 5? We've already had a first look at Mads Mikkelsen's ex-Nazi character Voller, who is linked with NASA's moon landing program and serves as the movie's antagonist. The character is inspired by Werner von Braun, a Nazi engineer who worked for NASA in real life. He will be accompanied by Boyd Holbrook's Clabber. We also know that Phoebe Waller-Bridge will be making her appearance as Helena, who is also Joan's goddaughter, and will be accompanying Ford on his adventure. On a more surprising note, John Rhys-Davies will return as Sala for the first time since 1989. Most of the details are being kept under wraps, so you'll just have to wait and see. That's a wrap for this video. Are you excited about the release of the 5th installment of Indiana Jones? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.